Hey, how's everybody doing? So I wanted to put a quick recording together for you all to share some of my experience, and in case some of you all are experiencing something maybe a little bit similar, because some of the stuff that I've been experiencing is just it's downright strange and odd for people to act the way that these people have acted towards me uh, with complaints that I've filed and other things that are legitimate complaints that they should have done their duty and due diligence to get to the bottom of. Because according to the actual laws, they are required, they're bound by the laws, the constitutions, the uh, actual laws put in place, and not to mention the commercial codes that the federal government and the states have put together that are actually to limit these public servants. They're more so to limit the public servants than they are uh, put in place to be used against us, we the people, for various everyday activities. And whenever these public servants decide that they want to destroy somebody's life, they just use whatever arbitrary excuse they come up with because they don't have any accountability. But I find it interesting that, and if you all have been paying attention and listened to some of these recorded conversations with some of these idiots, uh, they don't act. First of all, they don't act like they know what they're doing, and second of all, they act in a manner that it's almost as if they know what's going on, but are beating around the bush to deflect and make excuses for and play dumb and all this childish stuff that they've done, all these childish actions that these public servants here in Zanesville, Ohio have committed that I've recorded. I have plenty of evidence of it. It's pretty simple. They have a job and they should do it. Not according to their own interpretation, but according to the actual laws, like I stated, that bind them. And if any of you all doubt what I'm saying, just take a few minutes and read it for yourself. Go read the constitutions, both for your state and the federal constitution. Go read some of the definitions of these terms, these terminologies that are used, and you will see that they are basically uh, treating apples as oranges, if that makes sense to you. Um, Now, like I was saying, throughout this whole situation, not just with the noise in general that I've been dealing with, but uh, specifically the noise coming from the local area businesses. I mean, it's very clear in the codes and the laws that are established, that have been established by the legislature, uh, that describe what these people are supposed to do, but they don't do it. They refuse to. And now there's a potential that it's one of two things. I am dealing with a potentially harmful situation. Uh, it appears to be harmful to me, um, and for what reason it doesn't make any sense. It's one of two things. It's either sheer negligence, and these people are just so stupid they don't know what the hell's going on. They don't have the ability to figure it out or pay attention to me explaining to them what they are supposed to do, or um, according to what I'm reading in the codes and in the laws, and trying to convey that information to them. But for some reason, they can't retain it. Um, it's hard for me to believe that these people are that dumb. But I mean, you never know. You never know these days. Maybe they are, but it makes more sense that they're probably a little bit more intelligent than I'm willing to give them credit for. And what they are doing is using deflection, ignorance, willful ignorance, um, playing little games to beat around the bush so as not to, one, fix the situation that they've caused because of their lack of willingness to perform their duties according to the laws. But on top of that, there, I don't know, there's a possibility that there is something nefarious going on with the situation, and that after doing much research for several years on things such as long range acoustic devices or long range acoustic weapons, uh, these types of devices that have been developed by the military and private contractors for the military, and they've been around for a while, uh, probably a couple decades at least in the public, as far as public knowledge is concerned. Who knows, how long they were being developed, maybe in top secret projects or some type of black book project. Uh, but aside from all that, it's just these devices have been around for a while, and they operate on the same premise that essentially a microwave oven does. Um, if you think about a microwave oven, when you put food or material in a microwave oven, a glass of water, a cup of water for coffee or something, a mug, full of water, you want to heat it up. The way that it works is it transmits a wireless signal, 2.4 gigahertz or 2.45 gigahertz, depending. There are some fluctuations and variances there in the frequency that's actually cast. But what happens is that the material inside the box, that's the microwave, when you open the door, put it in there, and then you close the door, it's trapped in that little box. And according to the, I guess, research, um, the signal, this 2.4, 2.45 gigahertz signal, is cast into that box. And what they say is that the box contains the frequency, the 2.4 or 2.45 gigahertz, and prevents it from leaking out. Well, we all know that that's not entirely true because a lot of these microwave ovens do leak radiation. Um, you can test it with meters, especially up close. If you stand in front of a microwave while it's running, you could be exposed to that, and it can be very harmful. Um, but the way in which it works is the wireless frequency interacts with the electrons in the water molecules and excites those electrons and causes them to vibrate and causes the water molecules to vibrate, and that vibration vibrating against each other and other materials causes friction. The friction causes heat and a heat buildup, and that's what actually causes the food to cook. Um, if any of you all have used a microwave for any length of time, and probably have heard this for a while, that microwaves cook from the inside out. And that's not always true, because when you microwave something, or at least when I have in the past, I don't use microwaves anymore, but when I did used to use them, I remember like putting a piece of meat or something in the microwave to warm it up, and there'd be sections of the meat that would still be cold and other sections that would be hot or burnt, and it never really made sense to me. But when you study how a frequency actually propagates, and you look at not just a two-dimensional version of the wavelength, but you actually consider the three-dimensional version of the wavelength, it's more of like a spiral. And so the two-dimensional version, you see peaks and valleys and up and down of the wavelength. But in reality, it's a spiral that is spinning like a corkscrew. And so the sections of the material, the meat or whatever it's being heated, that is in the peak areas is the areas that get heated or overheated, or for the most part cooked, I guess, for lack of better terms. And then the areas that are in the valleys of the wavelength, they don't get cooked much at all, or they don't get heated up much at all, because there's not much interaction or activity there, because the amplitude in those areas specific areas is low in that valley portion of the wavelength. And so, without getting too much farther into all that, the basic concept is that that's how food in a microwave or material in a microwave is heated up, is by exposure to this particular frequency. Now, if you do some research, you will find that, for example, um, there's all kinds of things that use 2.4 and 2.45 gigahertz. A lot of wireless gaming console controllers, baby monitors, wireless baby monitors, um, radio controlled vehicles, cars, radio controlled helicopters, quadcopters, all those things, drones. A lot of them operate on that frequency spectrum. But also, many of you may not realize this, but the wireless meters that were forced onto properties almost everywhere across the country and in most developed countries across the world, but specifically here in the U.S., or I should say on the U.S., um, these wireless meters were forced onto properties, whether we liked it or not. At one point, I battled with the electric company because they didn't give me the option, even though they said that I had the option, and according to the actual code, there was supposed to be an option to keep an analog meter. They refused to pay attention to that. They didn't care. They were going to push these wireless meters whether they liked it or not. And when they did so, I started experiencing some very strange health issues. This is going back to July of 2018 when they moved all of these, or forced, I should say, these meters onto the properties. And it's very interesting because it's the same frequency range that a microwave oven uses. And when you consider the wireless meter on the side of a house is sitting behind roughly 200 amps of electricity at 120 volts. So that's quite a lot of watts uh, that's capable of being transmitted from that wireless transmitter and receiver, because they're two-way communications. They operate on one band for incoming and on another band for outgoing. And typically, most of these meters operate on 900 megahertz for one band and 2.4 gigahertz on another. There may be some variations depending on manufacturer, and um, there may be some upgrades. They may have changed some of that over the past roughly 3.5, almost 4 years, since they pushed all these dangerous devices into the communities, and started exposing people to very high levels of this particular frequency. Now, another device, if you will, that uses this frequency is Wi-Fi routers. Um, so we already have a saturation of 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth or spectrum in our communities, in our neighborhoods, even in the schools, and then they add these additional devices that increases the amplitudes. They can compound and create dangerous levels of exposure. Whereas one individual source may not be in and of itself at a dangerous level, but when they combine, they can create what's called hotspots, where the uh, waveforms combine, where those peaks combine, and it combines the amplitude, or it combines the energy behind that particular transmission. And what they can do is create electric and magnetic fields where these waves that are propagating, where they intersect. And uh, I'm trying to think of a good example. It's almost like, if you know the idea of triangulation, or like triangulating a wireless device like a cell phone in between multiple cell towers, that sort of concept. It's similar to that, but a little bit different. But if you think of that concept, or I mean, if you even want to get a visual, I mean, think about like Ghostbusters, the older movie, where they have the streams coming out of their uh, the plasma guns, or what, I can't remember what they were called, uh, and they never cross the streams and all that stuff, and so. But if you think about how those streams looked, I mean, it's a bad example, but it's the best visual I can think of uh, to give you now off the top of my head as far as how to picture in a way uh, how these frequencies propagate. And so the situation that I've been dealing with, aside from the noise from the local area business operators that don't give a damn about keeping the peace, or respecting the peace and not disturbing that in the community. They care more about profits. Um, Aside from that, these other issues that I've been dealing with, it's based on my research, very very similar to uh, these other concepts that I've described to you. And that's not just a theory that I pulled out of thin air, no pun intended. Um, it's based on not only research but also testing that I've done at this particular property to determine what exposures that I am being exposed to, what frequency bandwidths, what spectrums that I'm finding, and it just so happens that there are very high levels of what my meter picks up as Wi-Fi bandwidth, uh, like abnormally high. Even if I was able to pick up some trace signals from Wi-Fi routers for my neighbors, the houses are spread out far enough to where it would be very minute. I wouldn't be able to pick up a very strong signal, if any at all, because of the distance. And that's not what I find. When I test, I actually find pretty high levels of the Wi-Fi spectrum, multiple bands, at very high levels. And this is when I don't have any Wi-Fi or wireless transmissions going on within the property. No Wi-Fi is running, cell phones, all that stuff's turned off. Anything wireless is turned off. As a matter of fact, I've had the electrical service removed from the property altogether, and use a gas-powered generator to generate electricity when I need it. So it's only running, the house is only powered when I need it. Other than that, it's completely non-operational. There's no juice running through the wires in the house, the electrical wiring. So what I'm picking up, there's no way it's coming from this actual property. The signals are way too high to be neighbors' Wi-Fi routers, or even if they have Wi-Fi extenders and that sort of thing, there's enough distance to where, you all have used Wi-Fi. Sometimes you go on the other side of your house and you can barely pick up a signal. They don't always work that well, and it doesn't make any sense. The only way it makes sense is these additional devices, such as the wireless meters on the sides of the houses, are transmitting the same frequency spectrum and are causing it to be amplified in my general, or I guess specific area, or the specific property. And again, I have no idea if it's just sheer ignorance and negligence, and these people just don't give a damn about the harm that they cause, whether it's the company causing it or the public servants who make excuses for it. Um, or if it's something nefarious, if there may be devices being used to cause harm. Because, well, let me put it this way: just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If you look up, go to a search engine and search long range acoustic device or long range acoustic weapon. They're also known as the acronym LRAD, which stands for long range acoustic device. Police departments all over are using these devices. As a matter of fact, there were reports that came out of Australia not too long ago. I want to say it was probably about 6 months ago or so, maybe not quite that long, um, where people were actually being burned and harmed by these devices. The police departments were displaying them prominently on police vehicles. It's a large square-ish type of device. It kind of almost looks like one of those square subwoofers, if you know anything about stereos for cars. Um, Not quite, but it looks similar. But anyway, so they display these devices, they use them. It's well known to people that are aware of these things that municipalities are using these devices. Even corporations, companies are using these devices. Gas stations and places where, uh, quote unquote, troublemakers, where gang members and youth hang out and cause trouble, they will use these devices to put out a frequency, an annoying sound, to cause people not to stick around and hang out. It's been reported on in the news. It's been talked about. There's plenty of research about the use of these types of devices. And even though, according to these people, whether researchers or quote unquote doctors or quote unquote professionals, um, to them it's all subjective. They don't consider any of these types of devices to cause any severe harm or any harm in general. They make it sound like that there's no correlation from exposure to actual damage or long-term damage or really any damage at all, whether temporary or permanent. Um, After talking to many healthcare providers, quote unquote, uh, they they just refuse to pay attention. And again, it's hard for me to believe that these people are this stupid and this incompetent. I mean, maybe they are. I mean, look around these days; people are just not that smart. We've all been dumbed down and brainwashed in one way or another, and uh, maybe that's the case. But I just my gut doesn't tell me that's the case. My gut tells me that there may be something more nefarious going on, and whether it's a Doctor Evil type situation or some jerk off politician that is usurping his power, or I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be a whole plethora of different things, and I don't necessarily want to get into speculations and all that kind of stuff. I just want to talk about the actual experience because it doesn't make any sense. Now, early on in this, and back in 2018 when this first started up, and I started experiencing all of this noise, not just from the business operators here locally operating their machinery at night, but this other noise that's been coming off of the power lines that the electric company has established. Um, that's not a theory. That's fact. Not only have they done the noise assessment and proved it, but I've done my own assessments and I've validated it. In fact, my readings are higher than their readings. Go figure. And my devices aren't even as accurate as theirs, or not accurate, sensitive is the right word. Um, so going all the way back to 2018 and going over the whole experience over the past couple of years and the way that these jackass public servants have acted not just the quota hire dispatchers that don't want to take complaints, even though that's their job, that's what they get paid to do. Um, they manipulate the situation uh, so that way they can use it to their advantage. And they can make up all kinds of nonsense and cry about how I made their job hard for them, uh, just so they can commit fraud, and the rest of the gang can commit more fraud and uh, drag me through the courts and practically try to destroy my life, even though they're so incompetent they didn't quite manage. Um, Based on the way that they have acted, it's not in a way that uh, people that say that they care, they don't act in a way that people would if they actually cared about the community. Because this is not just about this property. This is not just about my health and my life. I know there are other people that are dealing with this very same thing. These strange vibrations, these strange sounds, um, sensations, feelings. Not like, my feelings were hurt because you said something, but I mean feelings like, you feel like a sensory, like touch. You feel with touch with your hands or whatever, your skin. There's sensations, there's feelings like that are odd. They're just odd. Uh, and the really strange and odd thing about it is it's local only to this property. When I go away from the property, it goes away. So what that tells me is, based on their actions, they either know something or they're just told to play dumb, whichever the case might be. Uh, and then on top of that, to not be interested to get to the bottom of it. Um, to make excuses to say that, oh, well, nobody else is complaining about it, when that's not even true. Almost at every turn, whether it's the experience I'm dealing with the electrical issue and the electrical power lines, or the excessive noise, the disturbance of the peace at night, I'm finding other people, locally and not locally, that are dealing with this very same things. Uh, Local people, other people are experiencing and dealing with this disturbance of the peace, and it's very annoying to them as well. And no matter what I've done, and no matter what I've tried to do to get everybody together to file complaints as a group, it didn't really make a difference. But regardless of that, I've been told numerous times that no one else is complaining about the production noise at night, and that's a flat out lie. These public servants they're just blatantly lying through their teeth because there's no accountability, uh, and because of the fact that there are other people complaining, especially over off Sharon Avenue. If you're familiar with Zanesville area, off Sharon Avenue, right there near the Stave Company's entrance, along that stretch of Sharon Avenue, it's extremely loud over there. And I know for a fact that other people have told me, now whether or not they actually did it or not, I don't know. I'm just going by what they've informed me of, that they told me that they called themselves. As a matter of fact, at one point, one of the neighbors that was walking by had called right there while I was talking to them, and so I could witness it. But yet I'm being told constantly that, oh, well, nobody else is complaining. I think that it's more of the case that these public servants either just don't give a shit, which may be the case, but if that is the case, then that's extremely concerning for the community, because they should. It's either that, or they know something that they're not leading on about, or at least trying not to. I mean, They can play games all they want, but for someone who isn't blind or stupid, that can see through their lies and through their uh, actions of fraud, a pattern starts to develop. And when you take into consideration the uh, constant attempts to drag me through the courts and to arrest me, throw me in a cage because I called to file a complaint about noise, which I'm entitled to. Um, they are supposed to be obligated according to the laws. They are obligated according to the laws and according to the Constitution and according to the codes that bind them to address the issue. But they've refused. See, I think early on, it seems to me, based on my experience, and you probably, a lot of you don't see this because obviously you're not part of the situation. A lot of you are on the outside looking in, and you see very limited, skewed perspectives or skewed bits of information, and then you try to put that together with your own limited base of knowledge, and it a lot of times doesn't make sense to you all. But frankly, it doesn't matter. It makes sense to me and to those that are paying attention. Um, and yeah, it doesn't really make sense. It's almost as if they knew something was going on and were playing games in an attempt to glean information from me that they could use against me. Medical history, um, work history, military service history, a lot of that sort of thing, or a lot of those sorts of things, they were gleaning information from me about to use against me. They never once took an honest attempt or made an honest effort to address these issues. Whether it's the noise coming from the business operators at night or anything. I've tested them multiple times to see what their actions would be. Like, for example, for a long time they kept telling me and lying to me, telling me that, oh well, the businesses are in the county and we can't do anything about that. And although technically that's true from the standpoint that the police department can't themselves enforce anything in the county, um, what they are it doesn't mean they can't do anything at all. What they are supposed to do is investigate the situation. They are perfectly capable of going into the county to investigate. Just like Sergeant Patnod admitted that he went to the stave company, sat in their parking lot, and listened. He went into the county, he investigated, but he didn't bother following through. He failed miserably and admitted it. Um, there was another time that I had found uh, some trash on my property, or on, excuse me, let me rephrase that, on this property um, that I'm the beneficiary of. I found some trash from the local TV station. There were some program notes or what do you call it, like script notes for something they had to read for a story or something. I can't remember exactly what it said. But at any rate, it said the TV station's name on it, and it had their information and everything. So I knew it came from the TV station. Also, I called just to, out of curiosity to see how they would react, the public servants. So I called and filed a complaint about the littering. Now, keep in mind the TV station is located in the county. This property where I'm located is located on the city. And so when I filed that complaint about the littering, the trash, they went into the county. They went to the TV station and addressed the issue, the littering issue, with the station manager. They filed a report. They did the whole thing. So they were willing to go into the county for a littering complaint, but they have refused for years to go into the county about a noise complaint. Now, when you boil it all down, what's the difference? I mean, aside from the obvious, you got physical litter, and in the other instance, it's audible noise. It's not a physical um, item that's either being littered on my property, or excuse me, littered on this property, or uh, that sort of thing. It's a noise trespass, and so when you boil it all down, it really doesn't make a difference. It's really semantics when you think about it, because regardless if it's a physical piece of trash or if it's noise that's the trespass, it's unwanted things, to make a general statement or use a general word, unwanted things uh, on this property that I'm the beneficiary of, that prevents me from being able to enjoy it like I should be able to. And whether it's physical trash or noise that is the trespass, it really makes no difference. The outworking of the process should be the same. But I've been able to prove that without a shadow of a doubt, based on these recorded conversations, the evidence that I've gathered, and all of these fraudulent court cases, and all of this nonsense uh, dragging me through these processes, and not to mention stealing my gun, uh, simply because I complained to these worthless, incompetent public servants that don't want to do their jobs that they get paid to do. Uh, they not only uh, basically tried to turn my life upside down, but they stole my gun from me. Um, they didn't have any reason to. As a matter of fact, the only reason they even have the damn thing is because when they ambushed me on my property and threatened my life, and I thought they were going to kill me, um, of course, in that situation, it would have been stupid for me. It would have been suicide if I tried to pull my own firearm to protect myself, because I already had about 10 different firearms pointed in my face, ready to fire. And about that point, I thought I was already dead. I was just waiting to hear the bang. But so after they did all of this, all because I made phone calls and complained about noise, they threatened my life, took my property, took the gun, and even what they wanted to do is they wanted to leave it at this property. They wanted to leave it unsecured at this property when they whisked me off and put me in a cage for God knows how long. I think I was there for 2 weeks the first time and then 30 days the next. So they wanted to leave the gun at this property unsecured. Probably so somebody could steal it. That would be my guess. They were probably trying to set it up that way. Either that, or maybe they're just lazy as hell and they didn't want to do the paperwork. But, to prevent it from being stolen by someone else and being used to kill somebody, or, be used in an actual crime, other than them, committing the crime that they did when they stole it, they took it. They took it so it wouldn't be left here unsecured, because I wasn't allowed to put it in my safe. I wasn't allowed to secure it in any way, shape, or form, because they wouldn't let me. These tyrants completely threw handcuffs on me, and the whole time I'm thinking I'm already dead, but they're throwing handcuffs on me and put me in the back of a police car, and I'm dealing with all that anxiety from dealing with these idiots. And so I forced them to take it, thinking that I'd get it back at some point. But no. See, what they did was they manipulated the courts. So all because I called them to do their job, they stripped me of my rights. They stripped me of my property, or the property that I'm a beneficiary of, I should say. And who knows if they still have it? I mean, for all I know, they sold it or traded it in for their own new, bright shiny weapons that they can use to, threaten other people with. At this point, I don't really know where the property is. But as you heard in the recordings, as I reached out to Donald Mason regarding this issue of stealing the property, stealing the gun, he refused to cooperate. And so now I have evidence of a conspiracy. Now it's interesting when I go back and look at all of the experience from beginning to end. I look at all the actions that they performed. Not once did they actually do anything to help the situation be better. Everything that they did was to make the situation worse for me. And early on, it didn't make any sense to me because, well, hell, I mean, I didn't have a reputation here. I wasn't from here. Uh, Not to mention the fact that it wasn't like I moved into the area and started trouble. I relocated here. I'm beneficiary of a purchased property. I'm not a renter. I'm not I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not I don't hurt people. I don't go out and terrorize the neighborhood. I don't do any of this nonsense. And so it didn't make any sense to me early on why they took this stance of not being helpful. They were acting like sticks in the mud and dragging their feet, beating around the bush, making excuses, and trying to act friendly just so they could glean information from me that they could use against me. And they did that multiple times. They tried to use it in the courts, even though that backfired. Idiots like Tom Porter that can't keep track of what he's doing. He's too full of lies to keep track of all of his lies, and he gets caught in his lies when he's on the stand testifying. But, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's not like they have any accountability. Their supervisors are all lame ducks, have their heads shoved so far up their asses that they can't see straight, and they are more of a lunatic, or they're more, how should I say that? They are lunatics of a higher caliber than the quote-unquote criminals and the bad people in the communities. In fact, I think in a lot of these situations, not only do I just think it, but I know it. I mean, based on firsthand experience, these public servants create their own situations that they can profit from. They arbitrarily go after people for so-called crimes that they commit 10 times over. So why is it they think that they can hold other people accountable for things that they do themselves? Well, it's because there's no accountability. They're hypocrites. And so with all that being said, it is very evident that there is something going on here. Now, like I said, whether it's a true nefarious situation where they are purposely doing something to harm me, or it's just out of sheer negligence and naivete and stupidity, and not only the public servants here locally don't know what the hell they're doing, but the employees of the electric company, the engineers, quote-unquote supposed engineers that put these systems together, they clearly don't know what they are doing, unless there is something more nefarious going on. And when you look at Tom Wheeler from the FCC, he was the head of the FCC. I don't know if he still is. But at one point, he did a press conference when he was talking about 5G and the rollout of 5G and other technologies, and basically damn near salivating at the mouth while he's talking about it, because of the profits that are going to be made off of all this technology being put into the communities. He states very clearly that they don't give a damn about studies and tests to make sure it's safe. They're going to sidetrack all of the testing and force the technology into the communities because there's a lot of money to be made. I can't remember his exact terminology, but just look it up. Look it up. Tom Wheeler, FCC, press conference regarding 5G. I want to say it's probably a year or two old, maybe a little bit older than that. I can't remember exactly when the press conference came out. It might even be, several years old. But just look it up. Look it up. You'll be able to see it pretty quickly. If you type those words into the search engine, and search for a video of the press conference, and you can see it for yourself. The way this guy acts, he's a lunatic. He's a raving lunatic. The way he acts, it's concerning, because his blatant disregard for people's health, and he is more concerned with profits than he is with people's health, and it's so blatantly obvious. It's disturbing, but that would make sense. See, that would make sense that these dangerous technologies are being used, we are being tested on, and when it's found to be dangerous, they don't give a damn because the technology is already in place, and it's not like the public servants are going to do anything about it. So that kind of leaves the responsibility in our own hands, which, I mean, ultimately it is anyways. But, if I would have realized that these public servants were that worthless, I never would have reached out to them in the first place. This is the first community I've ever been in where I've had to deal with such incompetence in the public servants. And like I said, it's hard for me to believe that they are that stupid. I think more than likely that it's just a game. They're playing a game because there's no accountability. There's all this cover up for, the criminals that wear badges. The prosecutors refuse to, file charges against the public servants, the criminals with, uniforms and badges because, well, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. The police are what brings them the cases, creates the charges that they can create the cases on, and that way they can create the bonds from the not only the primary bonds but the secondary and tertiary bonds as well, the penal bonds and so forth, that they sell in the open market for profit. So they commit fraud, they commit trust fraud, just to profit from it. And so it makes more sense when you put all of that information into context that this is just another example of fraud that they're profiting from. Whether it's the local public servants profiting themselves or them protecting their cohorts, the public utility companies, because they're all a subsidiary of the state. Whether it's a public utility company or a police department, they are all companies registered with the state, and they're given special privileges over people, over us, over we the people, which is unconstitutional. It's in violation of the Constitution. It's in violation of many other laws, and not to mention the codes and regulations, but it's in violation of that. But, again, there's no accountability. So what do they care? They're going to get paid. They're going to go on and do their job and, do whatever they want to do. Destroy people's lives and profit off of it. And then, it's not like you can file a lawsuit in the court and actually get remedy or, hold these people accountable. They might get a slap on the wrist. And, if it's something serious and egregious enough that, it would warrant a case that they would actually hear. Some jerk-off attorney is going to work with the court to get the injured party some measly settlement, but the offender isn't going to get much of anything, maybe a slap on the wrist. If even that. A lot of times the insurance pays out on these settlements and lawsuits and stuff, and claims, and a lot of people think it's taxpayer money and all this garbage, but no, it's insurance covers all that cost. They pick up the tab there. But see, this is, in a way, I'm thankful. I hate that I've had to go through this. I hate that I've had to endure this treatment and had to deal with these morons. But it's taught me quite a bit. Not only about myself, but about the reality that we live in, the reality of the courts, the realities of the systems that we are supposed to be able to use to get remedy. And when it's not possible, when they've blocked the path to remedy because of nepotism and other things. It's forced me to look elsewhere, and so that's what's led me to the point that I'm at now with um, the only way that I can find to hold these people accountable. And the only way I know of is to make it to where no insurance company will ever insure them again. So therefore, if they can't be insured, they can't hold that position. They can't work for the city. They can't work for any job. They can't work in any position that requires them to be insured. Um, so they've forced this upon themselves. And unfortunately, not more. Let me rephrase that. Unfortunately, there's not more people out there that are willing to stand up against this oppression, against these tyrants and traitors that blatantly ignore our rights that are God given, by the way. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights, the Constitution only secures our rights. It evidences our rights that are given to us by our Creator, that no man can take away from us, period. But when they trick you to think that you're a plastic card with a name on it, when they say, "Is this you?" and they hold up your driver's license, well, first of all, it's not even your driver's license, but they hold it up and say, "Is this you?" and you say, "Yes." Well, that's you saying that you're that card. And I mean, wow, just think about that for a moment. Yeah, that card doesn't have any rights. It's an inanimate object. And so when you identify as an inanimate object, you all of a sudden become a product on a shelf that doesn't have any rights. So see how they trick us into this little game. But anyways, I don't want to get into all that. This is getting a little bit longer than what I originally had planned, but I wanted to talk about these things because it's very odd. Why would people want to do this, especially public servants? I mean, it's not like they started their own company and I'm bothering them on their own private property or something like that. They're public servants that claim to be working for the people. I mean, you look at the websites, you look at Donald Mason and what he wrote, or what whoever wrote, probably wasn't him, on the city website regarding his duties and obligations, and it's all flowery and makes it sound good, like he's there for everybody and he's willing to work with any personalities and all. It's nonsense. It's all bullshit. Because when you really try to work with these people, they're just I can't even think of a good word to explain explain these people. They're just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could think of some colorful words to, to describe them, but I will refrain at this point. There's just no point in doing all that. It's it'll be funny, but but not productive. So I mean, just consider what I've said. Um, of course, there's probably going to be a few people out there that are going to leave some stupid comments, because that's what I've been seeing a lot lately. It's just, I mean, wow, the IQ of some of these people can't be much higher than the amount of teeth they have left in their mouth. Let me put it that way. So I encourage you all to think about what I've said, think about these things that I've discussed or talked about, and look it up yourself. Look up the information. Look up the Tom Wheeler press conference about 5G. Look up how a microwave works. Look up the frequencies that it uses. Look up what devices, what products use 2.4 gigahertz. You'll be amazed at the long list of devices that use this same frequency, the same band that's essentially used in a microwave oven. So just ponder that for a second and think about that. I mean, that in itself is pretty disturbing. How anybody, I would say in the right mind, but these people clearly are not, how anybody could think that that would be okay. I mean, essentially, it's like opening up a microwave oven and turning entire houses or entire structures into a gigantic microwave oven. Because there's certain materials that block the frequencies, and so if they're able to get in, they can't get out, and they bounce around until they dissipate, until they lose enough energy and dissipate. And anyways, I don't want to get off on another topic, but just think about it. Do your own research. Think for yourself. It's not that difficult. I think if people were more willing to put down their game controllers and stop playing games for a little bit and maybe read a book, maybe read the constitutions, not just the federal constitution, but the constitution for the state that you are on, read these documents. They're there for a reason. Most people don't. Most people just go by what the TV tells them, what the news says, or what Instagram or TikTok is telling them. And it's just utter nonsense. There's too many people running around with misconceptions. They don't have any clue about reality because they've been immersed in a virtual reality world. They've been immersed in a matrix. And so they're unable to really pay attention. But if any of you out there that are listening to this, if you're able to think for yourself, hey, God bless you. If you can't, God bless you too. But I can't deal with these people. I don't have the patience for them. So I encourage you all to think for yourselves. Require more from your public servants. Don't be afraid to hold them to a higher standard. Period. It's up to us to change this if we want to. Things don't have to be the way that they are. Things don't have to be all screwed up and chaotic. They are only this way because we, the people, are not acting the way that we should be. We are not asserting our roles in our society to hold the standards, to keep the standards. We are acquiescing. A majority of people are acquiescing and keeping their face buried in a device, a TV, a tablet, a phone, a game console, some kind of distraction to keep them from paying attention to reality. And this is the very thing that has allowed all of this nonsense to go on. And don't even get me started about the past 2 years with all this garbage that we've had to endure, and some people think is real. Don't even get me started. But God bless you all. Be careful. Take care and be careful. Be mindful of your surroundings. Be mindful of your reality as much as you're able to. And don't be afraid to learn something.